First keynote address was prepared by Isabel Oswell, Head of Business and Research Audiences at the British Library. Isabel Oswell was appointed to the British Library's newly created post, Head of Business Marketing, in January 2002. She's a graduate in International Marketing from Greenwich University and has over 25 years experience in marketing and new business development, both in the UK and abroad. She joined the library from Ernst & Young, where she was head of marketing for tax and e-business, having developed her career in the professional services and technology sectors, including BT Global, OneSource Information Services, Bain & Company, and Lotus Development. Isabel Oswell is responsible for overseeing the British Library strategy for the business, creative industries, and higher education sectors, and she was responsible for setting up and securing funding for the Business and IP Center to leverage the library's extensive business and IP resources for the benefit of SMEs and entrepreneurs. Building on its track record in London, the library, in partnership with the IPO, is set to develop a blueprint to roll out its model to unlock the potential of the PATLIB network and help rebalance the economy. Her presentation is about funding the IP Center at the British Library. Probably we will have some conclusions about funding the IP centers everywhere, talking about dead and life, after all. Please.
Thank you very much, Nick. I feel a bit of a fraud, really. I'm surrounded by so many patent specialists and librarians, but I have to say I started life as a market researcher, so I spent an awful lot of time in libraries doing desk research, and I also did a lot of research into the pharmaceuticals, aeronautical, and also automotive industries. So I have a fairly good idea, or had a fairly good idea when I joined the library, of what a patent was and the value of intellectual property. I'm hoping my technical abilities are up to changing these slides. So just in discussion with my colleagues, I've been at the library now 10 years, and what a roller coaster ride. It really started the story in New York, and it's ended up in Newcastle, not so far away from here. And it's not really ended, it's just the first in a new chapter of the centre. And we have a series called Inspiring Entrepreneurs at the library, which I'll talk a little bit about in a minute, a little bit more about. And quite often, when you ask the entrepreneurs the secret of their success and how they got to where they were and so on, and how they started, they say, well, if I knew at the beginning all the challenges I was going to have in the next few years, I would never even have started. And I think looking back on the last 10 years and the funding issues and opportunities that we've had, I would say we've experienced a very similar thing. But it's been fun, and that's the important thing. And Claire Harris, who's one of my colleagues and looks after our partnership programme at the library, and I sat down this morning at breakfast and figured out how much funding we'd actually brought in over the last 10 years. And we worked out it was just over 5 million of public and private funding. And in addition to that, we've managed to raise another 11 million, so twice as much, in pro bono help and support, gifts in kind, and positive press coverage. So we were very happy when we totaled it all up, but we still have a lot to do. We just gained some funding from the IPO, as Guy has already mentioned. And we're now set to try and win another £250,000 of private funding a year for the next 3 to 5 years. So moving swiftly on, this is where we were when I joined the library. We had what was called, I think it was called Sign Businesses. And so I was going over there anyway for an exhibition to the SLA, and so I went and had a visit, and I couldn't believe it. When I got there, there were queues around the block trying to get in at 10 o'clock in the morning, opening hours. And when they did get in, the whole place was vibrant and buzzing, and there were people doing research on their workstations and PCs. There were one-to-one sessions going on. There were workshops on understanding intellectual property. And I thought, wow, how about we do that in London? We take a great idea, and fortunately the idea wasn't copyrighted, and we apply it in London. So came back to London, working together with the New York Public Library, and funding. We managed to get some funding from an organisation called Mellon Foundation of £20,000 to support us working together with the New York Public Library to come up with a plan. And we came up with a plan which involved doing lots of research into the markets, what people needed and wanted, and how they reacted to the British Library having such a centre. Did lots of focus groups, lots of tours, that sort of thing. We got architects in to find out how much it would cost to build up workshop rooms, the networking area, and so on. And we put together what I thought was a very robust plan. And we thought, right, where on earth do we get funding from? And New York Public Library has been very successful in getting funding, because it gets funding from the government, but also there is more of a culture of giving in America, and great tax breaks and so on. And it seemed to me that everywhere you walked, there was the Bloomberg this, or the Unilever that. So even every single escalator, if you ever go there, has somebody's name on it, and they've been really successful at getting private funding. So I knew that, for example, Lord Sainsbury was very keen on supporting entrepreneurship and SMEs. So managed to get him to come into the library, presented our plan, and he said, yeah, very nice plan. You shouldn't be speaking to me. You should be speaking to the London Development Agency. And at the time, I'd never heard of the London Development Agency. And he said, I'll give you a contact there. So we took the plan to the London Development Agency, did a lot of research into what they were about before going, found out they were about supporting the London economy, helping people to get started in business, helping to create companies and jobs, and to sustain existing businesses. So we went to them with our proposal, and they said, right, okay, if you knock off a bit here and change a bit of that there, and change your target audience a bit, and go and do a bit more research, then we may just fund you. So anyway, after I think about 18 months of discussions, negotiations and so on with the London Development Agency, which is part of the regional development agencies, there were 9 of them in the UK, which have since been abolished, but we finally, they said, okay, we'll give you £2.4 million to build a centre in St Pancras, to build and run a centre over 2 years. So we'd already looked at, but just for your information, what did we have? What were our assets? So we had a dedicated reading room, light and airy, lots of space, and practically empty. And we could accommodate up to 100 seats in it. We had comprehensive business and IP collections, and I know you're all patent experts, but I'll come on to why the link between patents and business is so important, and Guy has touched on this. We have fantastic business and IP teams, reference teams on the desk, but they were both separately trained in business and intellectual property, and those are headed up by actually Nigel Spencer, who's going to speak quite soon after me. We're lucky to have a fantastic building in a central location that everybody could come to, although we suffer we're slightly different from other libraries in that you need a reader pass to come in. Most other public libraries don't. And we had all the access to the British Library facilities and support services. So, for example, a conference centre, well, I meant to mention there, seats up to 250 people, a cafe, a restaurant, and so on. So what did we do? This is the actual plan. What does the London Development Agency allow us to do? The money. We built some workshop rooms, a reception, networking area. We hired some key staff, like a business engagement manager, which is now Claire, and a project manager, for example, and some more people to man the desks. We purchased some PCs to put on every desktop, some printers. We developed, very importantly, a customer relationship management system so that we could track everybody who came into the centre and follow their progress. And also track all the relationships that we had with key stakeholders, London Development Agency, the Greater London Authority, the Department of Business Innovation and Skills, which was called something else at that time. We created a new website and we mounted an advertising campaign, above the line as we call it. So we advertised on posters and taxis and London newspapers. And this is, we started in 2004, and where we were, I suppose, at the end of the funding round was 2007. We had transformed ourselves into an academic and frankly empty reading room, into where business and IP collections were completely separate, and so were the teams, into an integrated business and IP centre, which is an inspiring place where people could come and develop their skills and learn how to use our databases and learn the value of patents and so on, and also network with each other, networking being such an important theme at this conference. I'm not going to go into all of the detail here, but I will skip to the bottom and say how important over that time it was to systematically measure and report on absolutely everything we did. So we literally knew exactly who was coming into the centre, how many times they'd been in the centre, what ethnic minority they were, whether they were male or female, what stage of business they were at, and so on, so that we could tell how successful we were being. And at the end of it, we had smashed all of our London Development Agency targets for supporting people to start up businesses, for helping to sustain businesses, for diversity, and also for creating jobs and for London. And as a result, they said, right, okay, we'll give you another 2.4 million to run the centre for another 4 years. So we were very, very pleased with that. And I don't mean to confuse you, because this is a confusing chart, but I just wanted to explain the process that we went through. This is actually a chart that I thought from Booz Allen. You may know, they're strategic management consultants. I don't think they've seen that. I've used it yet. But so what is the innovation cycle? How do you get your product or idea to market? It's really important to be inspired by those people around you, by role models, by case studies, by people you meet. I mean, quite often, people on their road to becoming an entrepreneur, the first people they will meet will be our reference team. And then they've got to be IP aware. You'll know the importance of that, to protect their idea, to protect their brand, but also to stop contravening somebody else's intellectual property rights. It's really important that they then go on to exploit their idea. So many people come in, I'm sure you all know this, they've got a patent and they think it's a fantastic patent, it's going to take the world by storm, and that's the end of the story. But actually it's only the beginning of the story, because they then have to get to market, whether it's through licensing, through partnerships, through building a factory, whatever. And the whole cycle begins again as the company begins to grow, which they hope they will. So what does that translate into? We started off in the first year, we'll read it before we opened, which is March 2006, so the footfall was diabolical. But in the first year of opening, we had 20,000 people, and we're now up to 75,000 people. So, and it's still going upwards in spite of our reduced marketing budget.